Puka Nacua is officially back. We'll tell you just how high we have him in our Dynasty ranks in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. On today's show, we are breaking down the Thursday night football game between the Vikings and the Rams. We finally got a good Thursday night game. I feel like we deserve this, Kate, because we've had a lot of injuries this year, some crappy primetime games. So we deserve to have this fun one, but we're also going to do some commotion at the end of the show. But Kate, I want to talk about Puka Nacua, who was kind of a surprise starter in this game. There was a lot of people that didn't think he'd be activated. He was activated. There was a report from Ian Rappaport before the game. They're going to be very careful about his workload. They're not going to overwork him. Limited snaps, 7 for 106, including 2 carries for 5 yards. Led the team in targets. Puka is back.
Puka is so back. And I want to give you an insane stat, okay? That just tells you how insane Puka Nacua is and how valuable he is to your fantasy rosters. Dating back to last year, Puka Nacua has 8 games of 100-plus receiving yards. So that's 8 games out of his 19 games with 100 or more receiving yards. Do you know how many games he has with fewer than 70 receiving yards?
Oh, gosh, only a couple?
It's 7. So he has fewer games with fewer than 70 receiving yards than he does games of 100-plus receiving yards.
It's incredible.
When Puka is on the field, he is a bona fide wide receiver 1. And I think we're kind of seeing, I don't know if maybe the team just felt a little bit more comfortable with Puka's health status, maybe than Cooper Kupp's in their respective first games back. But Cooper Kupp wasn't on the field for every single down. It just kind of felt like Puka has taken over as this team's wide receiver 1. Even last year, it still felt like Cooper Kupp was still the main guy, even though both were heavily involved. But I feel like that tide is kind of turned.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best example to me was the playoff game last year. Both of those guys were fully healthy, and it was Puka that just continued to rack up all the targets. I think I'm done having the conversation of who's the more important receiver, who's the more impactful receiver. I mean, you watch these games, and it's just so clear to see who is the better player. Now, what I want to talk about today, Kate, is where Puka ranks in terms of dynasty receivers. He got moved down in the latest batch of ADP from October, down to wide receiver 10. And you understand why, right? He missed a really big chunk of the season. It was unclear when he was going to come back. It was unclear whether the Rams were even going to bring him back if they got so far out of contention. Right now, they're right back into that NFC West hunt. They're actually ahead of the 49ers in the NFC West, which is crazy. But wide receiver 10, let's figure out where we should rank him. Chris Olave is currently being drafted at wide receiver 9. I would assume that's an easy choice for you.
Very easy, Puka.
Okay. A.J. Brown.
That one's a little bit trickier. Oof.
Now, there is an age difference, which we should mention.
Yeah, I think
A.J.
that's
Brown
probably
is
the
27.
tiebreaker there. I'll go Puka.
Yeah. Nico Collins, wide receiver 7. Both have injuries.
Yeah, both have injuries. I guess I think I'll stick Nico.
I think I would stick Nico as well. It took until this week for someone to surpass Nico Collins' receiving yards. Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm assuming it's Marvin Harrison.
Yeah.
Okay. Amon-Ra St. Brown.
I'll take Amon-Ra.
Okay. So we think he should be somewhere in the range of wide receiver 8 or so, give or take one spot. Now, this time last year, or a little beyond October, we were seeing him being drafted inside the top 5 receivers. We saw him take a leap over players like Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, AJ Brown. It seems like the dynasty community still is a little scared of the injury history.
And I think that's kind of fair. I mean, the injury history is part of what dropped him to the actual place where he's drafted. Like, I think it's almost like this vicious circle, right? Like, I think the fantasy community in general has a hard time kind of getting over the draft capital portion of a player. Even if we have a proven track record of production, it still seems like, well, if they're not a top end pick, can I trust this player long term? And I think part of that has been like Puka's, kind of what's holding back his dynasty value a little bit. And then you pair that with the fact that the reason he doesn't have that top end draft capital is because of a significant injury history through college.
Yeah.
So, like, those are two kind of points that are just feeding into one another.
I want to ask. Yeah, I agree. I think wide receiver 8 or so is where he's going to settle once we get out of October and into November. But I did want to ask you about Cooper Kupp, who played in this game as well. He caught a touchdown, 5 for 51, saw 8 targets. Didn't look 100% healthy, but was back on the field. How are you valuing Cooper Kupp? Because, man, he can be really good when he's fully healthy. Down to wide receiver 43 in Dynasty.
I mean, here's the thing. It's kind of crazy because Cooper Kupp was pretty old, relatively speaking, when he came out of college. So, like, it doesn't feel like Cooper Kupp is 31 years old, but he is 31 years old. You know who else is 31? Devontae Adams, who is being drafted one spot ahead of him in Dynasty. I think Cooper Kupp definitely has continued to lose value. There's no denying that.
So Cooper Kupp has played in 24 games over the last 3 years. So 8 games a season. Obviously, he's going to play some more this year. Still averaging 73 receiving yards per game. However, when you compare that to his 2021 season, which was 115 yards a game, it's a pretty big drop off in production. You're looking at like almost 50 yards per game, fewer now. And he's got a hard time staying healthy. But at wide receiver 43, some of the names being drafted around him, Rashid Shaheed, Xavier Legette, Khalil Shakir. Like, how much I love Khalil Shakir, but there's just no universe that Khalil Shakir ever puts up 75 yards per game, right? Michael Pittman.
Yeah, I think all of those concerns are fair. I think the concern dynasty managers probably have is just the fact that health has been an issue and the fact that he is getting older. He is 31 years old. So, like, all of those health issues that he has, like, the rehab process doesn't get any easier as you age. So, like, yes, I think the injury portion of it, like, maybe that is, also factoring into it because he hasn't been available. One of the biggest things for Cooper Kupp has been like, well, how often am I going to play him? And that's been a problem. And I just don't know if that problem is going to improve, just where he's at in his career. But when he is on the field, he's productive. So
yeah, I'm also just not that excited about him in a Russell Wilson-led offense, Kate. That's all.
I hope we do see that come to fruition. And
I know, but that would crush his dynasty value. Just pointing it out. All right, let's stay with the Rams because the Vikings didn't have a lot that was exciting. It was your usual cast of suspects, right? Justin Jefferson, 8 for 115. Aaron Jones got a ton of touches in this game. Everybody else was pretty quiet. I want to stay with the Rams and talk about Kyren Williams, who has now scored a touchdown in 10 straight games. Is he a top 5 dynasty running back? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. And get this, Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup alive. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. This episode is brought to you by Zbiotics. Pre-alcohol probiotic drink by Zbiotics is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct and not dehydration that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Zbiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you're going to feel great tomorrow. Again, step 1, drink pre-alcohol. Step 2, drink responsibly. Step 3, enjoy tomorrow. Go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use LockedOnNFL at checkout. Zbiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they're going to refund your money. No questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL at checkout for 15% off. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We are breaking down the Week 8 matchup. I can't believe we're already in Week 8. But Week 8 matchup between the Vikings and the Rams. Okay, let's stick with the Rams. I want to talk about Kyren Williams. 23 carries for 97 yards. He did not score a touchdown on the ground, but did add in 5 catches for 19 yards and a touchdown. I do want to point out the other running backs in this game. Blake Corum actually played, Kate, 4 carries for 9 yards, the only other running back to get a carry. But that's only because Kyren Williams needed to go out real quick to get his ankle taped. Once he came back on the field, Blake Corum did not see the field again. So my question to you, is Kyren Williams a top 5 dynasty running back for you? It's been close over the last couple months. He's been kind of right on that edge, but for you, is he a top 5 dynasty running back?
Yes, and he has been dating back to last year. And here's the thing. I do want to point out, I was a little bit panicked, like when they brought in Blake Corum. I backed
Me
off
too.
that top 5, standing because I was a little freaked out. I was a little bit freaked out. But here's the thing. It's not just the fact that like Kyren Williams never leaves the field, which is incredible. I mean, that's part of the reason that they brought Blake Corum in, was to kind of eliminate some of that need to have him on the field every down. But I have to imagine that, like, Sean McVay in practice is looking at these 2 running backs and thinks the gap is so significant between the 2 and what the product is when they have the ball in their hands that he's like, you know what? Forget the plan. I'm sticking with my guy. Like, and it's so clear.
I mean, it's just clear Kyron's the better player right now. There's also, again, I love Blake Corum. I was on the same side as you. I was concerned whenever you draft a running back in round 3 that it's as productive and as decorated as what Blake Corum was. I thought for sure he would get on the field and be a factor. He just hasn't been. One of the things I think Sean McVay likes about Kyren is he gives the Rams a little bit of an edge on offense. And you know how much I love Puka and Cooper Kupp, but those guys aren't really, they don't play with that same ferocity, right? And Kyren gives them a little bit of an edge to be a tougher team. And I think they kind of need that with their current offense. He's a perfect fit, Kate. And man, you look at the numbers like over the last 17 games, it's bonkers what he is doing.
Yeah, I mean, it does. He gives them this level of kind of physicality and toughness
Yes.
and just
Grittiness.
what's
Yes.
grittiness. And what's crazy is that, like, you don't really think of a Sean McVay offense as gritty or tough. Like, he brings that element into this game that they just don't really have elsewhere. And I know Puka Nacua, tough guy. I just want to, like, it's more about this physicality aspect
Yes.
that he brings. And you know what that physicality does? It tires out NFL defenses. Like, as the game goes on, when you're contesting with, Kyren Williams on an every down basis, I've got to imagine I'd be pretty exhausted trying to bring down Kyren Williams time after time after time into the fourth quarter. Like, he creates a level of exhaustion with the defense that, some of the more explosive elements in the game, like the Pukas, don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily bring for the Rams.
So, Kate, Kyren has now played 19 games for the Rams over the last 2 seasons when he's basically become a full-time starter. In that stretch, he's averaging 103 total yards per game and 1.4 touchdowns. You look at the dynasty landscape right now, how many of these other running backs between Brees Hall, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, Devon Achane, Jonathan Taylor are averaging 100 yards per game from scrimmage? The answer is none. The only one that was Christian McCaffrey, and he's out. We'll see when he comes back. I mean, I think it's fair to be concerned about like the long-term value, but you and I keep saying at the running back position, it's a year-to-year thing anyways. I'm going to worry about my running backs in 2026 when I get to 2026. Right now, there's just not that many guys that I would take over Kyren Williams. He's absolutely a top 5 dynasty running back for me.
Yeah, and you mentioned 2026. That's actually the year that Kyren Williams will become a free agent here. So we've still got all of 2024 and 2025 before we have to worry about Kyren Williams hitting the free agent market, which can be a time where we see running back values start to fluctuate, right? Because they might chase some money on another team that is less favorable to their production. They might not get paid. Like, there's always that risk with free agency, but the beauty of Kyren Williams is, I think, as long as he's in the Sean McVay offense,
Yeah.
he's that dude. And we've got, a year and a half left of him being that dude.
Yeah, a guy that scores touchdown and racks up a bunch of yardage and catches passes out of the backfield. Like, comes back to the draft capital, Kate. Like, if this was Bijan Robinson putting up the exact same numbers, we would be right. Like, same numbers and same contract. Let's pretend Bijan Robinson has a year and a half left on his contract. We would be going wild. Hey, look at this top 10 pick. He's fulfilling everything that we had hoped he would be. Kyren Williams does it as a day 3 guy, and yeah, that's cool. But what's his value going to look like 2 years from now? Like, I don't understand it.
I mean, you do understand it. It comes down to the draft capital. And you look back, why did Kyren Williams have the draft capital that he did? Well, part of that, he ran a slow 40. He ran a slow 40-yard dash. So, like, looking back, Marcus, how much do you think that slow 40-yard dash has impacted his NFL career so far?
None.
Not at all. Because guess what? It doesn't matter. He's got real life game speed and toughness. Was he productive in college? Yes. Like, we should have just looked at what he did on the football field, evaluate the player. I think this is a great lesson too, in kind of our evaluation of players in general. Like, obviously a slow 40-yard dash is not the end of the world, but like, if you had covered up that number, where would Kyren Williams had been drafted? Probably a lot higher. And
Probably 3rd round.
probably 3rd round. And then we're talking about him like we're talking about Blake Corum, right? Like, trust the process with Kyren Williams and trust what you have in one of the league's most productive running backs. Like, how much more does he have to prove? I think he's proven his point by now.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you can buy Kyren because he's so good right now that probably the dynasty manager that has him won't trade him. But if you have Kyren on your team, congratulations. We'll see you in the playoffs. Kate, let's do some promotion commotion. Some players that we are promoting from our bench into our starting lineups in week 8. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. We've got a really fun Sunday coming up, 13 games in the Sunday afternoon spot, which is going to make Red Zone so much fun. We also got our teams, Kate and I, Cowboys, Steelers, playing on primetime on Sunday and Monday. Go make a little bet. I think Pittsburgh and San Francisco is going to win. You just do a money line parlay. You can get about even odds over on FanDuel.com. And once you make that bet, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed that you can use on anything from the point spread, the money line, the totals, prop bets, futures bets, and more. It's all available on FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day. 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins. Our guy, Matt Williamson, pops on the Friday show with Tony. Make sure you check it out wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. All right, Kate, let's do some promotion commotion. It's time to promote some players from our bench or maybe even your waiver wire into your starting lineups in week 8. Who do you got?
I mean, are we just to the point where Rashad Bateman might just be an every week promotion commotion? Like, are we there yet?
I mean, I think he is a weekly flex play. Yeah.
Right? Like, we've been, just to pat myself on the back, like we've been calling the Rashad Bateman here for a little bit. Like, I feel like he's been a feature on the show each of the past 3 weeks, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So it might just be time where we just like contend that that's not he's no has he graduated from promotion commotion?
Yeah,
I think that
he's no longer eligible for
eligible. Good job, man. Okay, so I'm gonna pivot then. Cedric Tillman, wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns, who seems to be the biggest beneficiary of the Amari Cooper trade. They've got Jameis Winston starting at quarterback this week. We know that's great for YOLO balls and just slinging it up. And guess what? This Baltimore Ravens secondary, not what it used to be. And
Marlon Humphrey's going to be out too. So they're already missing one of their top corners.
They are bleeding fantasy points to opposing wide receivers, bleeding yardage to opposing quarterbacks. Like, I feel like Cedric Tillman could be the guy. He's already coming off a really solid game in his first outing without Amari Cooper. I think he could build on that tremendously. I liked Cedric Tillman a lot coming out. Didn't really get off to the hottest of starts, but you'll remember he was probably firmly in contention for that Biletnikoff award. If it hadn't been for an injury, and then teammate Jalen Hyatt kind of swooped in, but I always thought he had the more pro-ready skill set. So I'm excited to see him kind of crushing it.
Yeah, this is a big time opportunity for Cedric Tillman. And you're right. Like, you can throw all over Baltimore. And that was with Marlon Humphrey, who had 2 interceptions last week against Tampa. He's not going to play in this one with the knee injuries. So all systems go for Cedric Tillman. Kate, I'm going with Hayden Hurst, who's actually been out of the lineup the last couple of weeks with an injury, but he has practiced all this week. He's expected to play for the Chargers. Will Dissly, his backup, over the last 2 games has 16 total targets against the Cardinals, 8 for 81. He's dealing with a shoulder injury, has not practiced all week, not expected to play. No Quentin Johnson this week, who's dealing with an injury. Ladd McConkey is dealing with a hip injury. He's not likely to play. I think Hayden Hurst could easily be the top target getter with the Chargers. And whenever you're catching passes from Justin Herbert and you're getting that type of volume, I want you in my lineup.
That's so scary. That is a very scary proposition, but I mean, I do think you're right. They've been involving the tight end. So like the pathway is there, even if
Yeah.
it doesn't feel particularly
Can I
yummy.
ask you about a different situation? Because I think Tampa Bay is one that I think a lot of people are looking at, right? Because Mike Evans out of the lineup, Chris Godwin out for the season. They play Atlanta. This was a really high scoring game. It's at home. Are Trey Palmer or Jalen McMillan startable this week?
I think either of them could be in a not just a what the hell or what the heck flex. It's like a what the hell flex
Yeah.
for either of these guys. I mean, Baker Mayfield, one of my top fades of the week over in my Yahoo fades column for week 2, even though he's the quarterback 2 on the season. But I can't deny that like he has been an absolute playmaker this year. And part of that will extend to this game if he can make things work. He's currently leading the league in passing touchdowns, right? Like through the first 7 weeks. So I think, just given the trajectory of the offense right now and how well Baker Mayfield's playing, I guess I'll throw them in my lineups and see what happens. But hopefully you probably won't need to, because we've got, all of the teams available. We have no bye weeks this week. So that is kind of helpful in terms of maybe not having to delve as deep into the depth pool here, hopefully. All right, for my last commotion, this one's going to feel really icky and gross. Let's talk about Zach Charbonnet, who had some ups and downs. It, like, hasn't looked all that fantastic. And I mean, since Kenneth Walker came back from injury, it is so clear that this is, Kenneth Walker's job, right? But the Buffalo Bills have been a team that has been, able to be run on this year. Like, you've had a lot of production on the ground against this team. I just wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of room for, Kenneth Walker to get his full workload and for Zach Charbonnet to get a little bit of run. I think, generally speaking, Zach Charbonnet, after a really slow start, kind of got in his groove a little bit and then had the rug swept out from underneath him. So this is a spot where I think the matchup might be favorable enough that I'll give it a shot if I really need a play at running back this week.
And we should mention DK Metcalf likely not going to play in this game with a knee injury. So if you need a wide receiver this week, maybe you start one of the bench receivers for the Seahawks, like, I don't know, Jackson Smith-Njigba. I guess I've heard of him before. I mean, maybe this will be the week, Kate, that he produces. I don't know. I'm still
Jake
bitter.
Bobo, come on.
I will be sick if Jake Bobo is the one that's getting the DK Metcalf targets and not JSN. Like, it'll never be more over than if that happens. I'll be sick.
And yet I won't be surprised.
I won't, not at all. I shouldn't be surprised at all. All right. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen of the day. Check out the new Locked On NFL wherever you get your podcasts. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. Enjoy the games. We'll see you right back here on Monday.